lower in, and that's really a class issue, and race does come into play.
This is Let Your Voice Be Heard, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Good morning, happy Sunday, and welcome to Let Your Voice Be Heard, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, guys. We are back after a week of vacation. It was Passover, it was Easter, and it was Heathen Day for Stanley. So we didn't come last Sunday, but we are here back in effect. We are live. Of course, this is Let Your Voice Be Heard, where we talk politics, social issues, pop culture, and we do that all from a diverse millennial perspective. My name is Selena Hill on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me at Miss Selena Hill. And if you are watching via Facebook Live, shout out to you. You see I've been on my little natural hair journey. Yes. Y'all see me with the baby hair slicked down. So yeah, but I'm going to get a wash and set soon, but I just wanted to
I like it. I like it. I think you should wear it like that more often.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it, of course. Yeah, so we have a great show. I'm Miss Selena Hill. That's MS Selena Hill on Instagram and Twitter. We are live in effect. Stanley, Jackie are not here. Stanley is at Broccoli Fest.
He's at workation?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, he's in D.C., and, I think he's just, partying and having a good time. And Jackie's
that's what he would say about you, right?
Yes, that's what he always says about me, but usually it's true. So we have a great show lined up.
Hey, wait, did you just admit to something?
A little bit. I did. Alyssa's here with me.
Good morning. Effing vote.
Yes.
That's the message today.
Yes.
But I'm Ilyssa Fuchs, and you can find me on Facebook. I was going to say Fuchsbook.
That works. I like Fuchsbook. I like that.
At Facebook.com/Ilyssa Fuchs, or on Twitter at Ilyssa Fuchs, or on Instagram, Ilyssa.Fuchs. That's ILYSSAFUCHS if you're nasty. And, I talk about all the political and legal things. And I'm happy to be back this week. Missed you guys. Don't forget the 420 holiday was last weekend as well.
That's true. Who was celebrating?
I don't know anything. I don't confirm or deny any of that thing.
It's all good.
That's a thing? 420? What does that mean?
Well, you brought it up, Alyssa. I'm sure you know about the holiday. We'll leave that right there. So, Alyssa's here. Stanley and Jackie aren't, but we have two of our favorite correspondents here. We have Joshua Clennon and Tiffany Brown, and I will let them.
Tiffany with the good pension?
Okay, Tiffany, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do for work and why you are so dope and about that podcast.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Tiffany Brown. You can follow me at TiffLizB, TiffLizB. I work for a public sector union in New York. I am the assistant political director.
Whoop, whoop. Shout out to the
promotion.
I gave myself that title. Sometimes you got to take things.
True. That's true, especially as a woman.
Yes. And I also have a really great podcast called The Protest Bays. We just launched back in February for Black History Month, and we talk about a variety of issues that as it pertains to Black millennial women. So you should definitely listen to us, and shout out for Stanley for helping us through the podcast as well, even though he's on a work vacation right now / partying up at Broccoli Fest.
It's all good. And Josh?
So my name is Joshua Clennon. I'm a New York County Committee member, Manhattan Community Board 10 board member, executive director of Uptown Democratic Club. Professionally, I work in real estate. I'm a broker. I do property management and also some development, doing rehabilitation for HDFCs, affordable housing, etc.
So you got that money. You're talking about real estate.
Hey,
you buying brunch?
We trying.
You buying brunch?
I can't afford all that.
So we have a great show lined up. We're going to be talking about the 2020 Democratic primary. We have 20 candidates.
That's
guys.
a lot.
I can't even name them all. Honestly, so Cardi B, she actually put up a post and she said she's only been following about 6. And I was like, honestly, I agree, Cardi. But we're going to talk about it because we want to know who would be the best person for voters of color. They're like really a lot of them are really going hard and talking about white privilege and systematic racism. And we're going to talk about that and if they're really connecting with us and our voting block. We also have some news stories that we'll be going over.
There's news?
There's always
stuff happen?
A little bit.
Oh, really? I wasn't paying attention. Must have been that 420 holiday. But I don't know anything about that.
Are you still recovering?
I think that's Stanley. Stanley's still recovering. That's why he's not here this
Stanley
week.
is still recovering. Yeah, so we have a great show. Of course, if you want to let your voice be heard, please do so on our Facebook Live. We are on Facebook Live now. That's facebook.com/letyourvoicebeheard. Leave us a comment. We will try to read it on air. You can also call us up at
212-650-6903.
212-650-6903. And we also have
money. Just give us money. April is fundraising month, so make sure you hit that Patreon. We're going to post a link in the comments. That's patreon.com/BeHeardRadio, Selena. That's correct. She's giving me the thumbs up right now. So April is fundraising month. We cannot do this with no money. Obviously, we need money to put this show on the air and to keep bringing you this great content. We don't get paid any money. It's really just for equipment, station fees, other stuff we have to pay for. So make sure you hit that Patreon this morning and, give us the bread.
Cut a check.
Yes, definitely. So we're going to go on a quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're talking all things 2020 and how we can win. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard.
Tracy and Katie, I trust in my they never betray me. Met all these they sweeter than Sadie. When I started out, I just took what they gave me. Did all the favors, they never repay me. It worked in my favor because nobody.
And we are back. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. I just played some of the Kanye West Sunday service that he's been doing by request of Josh, who said that Kanye took him to church at his Coachella performance. Hold on, question. Has Kanye been redeemed or is he still canceled? Because Josh is up here supporting
forgive him because
really?
He's always been, he's always going to be one of my favorite rappers of all time. So it's like, just shut up, Kanye. I forgive you. Like,
I'm not allowed to answer that question.
Tiffany's face is like, Tiffany, do you forgive? Well, he's taking us to church.
He is.
He has, yeah. I mean, like, is he not?
He
Can be
no
redeemed?
Better. Kanye don't know better.
Can he be redeemed?
People, but
can he be redeemed?
Can Kanye be redeemed? I think when it comes to black people, I'm always going to give them a lot of grace and a lot of room to grow and redeem themselves. I do think Kanye West has to come to terms with some of the things that he said that revolves around Trump and just be honest. And I kind of feel like a lot of black celebrities, when they reach a certain status, like they just be pushing like love and light and love everyone. And I don't think that's the reality for most black people. So if people are rocking with Kanye West, cool. But, we got to be clear where he stands on things.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he's just an entertainer. I mean, I don't take anything he says seriously. And the fact is we need to stop looking at people like this and looking for them for advice or guidance or holding their opinions up on a pedestal. And he's just an entertainer. Let him entertain. Live his life.
I feel like that's fair, but like Trump was just an entertainer, quote unquote, in some ways. And like now he's the crazy president. So anyways, speaking of the crazy president, lots of news out this week about the Muller report, huh?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of fighting back and forth. They finally released the Mueller report last week. We weren't on the air, so we didn't really get to talk about it too much. Democrats in Congress still say that they want the full report, not like a partially redacted report. And the next fight that's going to escalate is whether or not certain people are going to comply with subpoenas to come down and testify about things that are in the report. Of course, Democrats are already talking about subpoenaing Robert Mueller himself to come down and talk about what's in the report, and they want to subpoena William Barr about the report and about some of the, I'll say, twists that he tried to put on the report. So I don't think this is over by any stretch of the imagination. This is, what do they say, the beginning of the end, or is this the end of the beginning? I'm not sure.
Do you guys have some thoughts on that? Tiffany?
The Mueller report, when it came out, I wasn't surprised that it wasn't explicit in terms of saying that he's, he was a part of collusion. But in so many ways, I feel like Mueller was like, okay, here are all of the tools that y'all need to impeach him and get him out of office, but it's up to Congress to take that step. Right. And in some ways, I kind of feel like because he's a president, like, do you think there was going to be really any sort of criminal charges brought against like a sitting president? I think we have to like deal with that and those ramifications. But I do think he gave us, the toolkit to get him or at least impeach him out of office. And someone said even if he doesn't, get removed from office, I still think that they would say that we still need to go through the exercise of getting him impeached so we can say that this sort of behavior for a presidential candidate and then the president is not okay in our society.
Josh, do you think that the president, it's time for him to be impeached based on the Mueller report?
Well, they're not going to have the votes. They're not going to be able to impeach him. It's not going to go through. It's not going to pass through the Senate. So, I mean, it's kind of a waste of time, which is why I think like Nancy's taking the stance that she is. But I do think he should be arrested after we get him out in 2020. He should go to jail.
Well, that's an interesting point because I was watching, I want to say it was MSNBC at one point last week, and they were like, it really looks like when he leaves office, he could probably end up going to jail. And the way that he could save himself from that is potentially to resign and ask President or who would become President Pence to pardon him, which is kind of like what Richard Nixon did. But the difference is, when Richard Nixon resigned, he resigned because he knew that they had the votes in the Senate to actually remove him. Republicans had turned on him. It was very clear that he was involved in crimes. And so he was like, I better go and, get a pardon before I end up going to prison. I don't know if Trump would actually resign because I think his ego is too big and he doesn't think that he's done anything wrong. And he thinks that everything he's done is just like the way things go, even though he sounds like a mafia boss. Like, do I have your loyalty? Will you do this thing to me? Why don't you go figure out removing Mueller? I mean, there's multiple problems there, even if it falls short of something that they were able to indict him for right now, even if they could potentially indict a sitting president, which is an open legal question where reasonable lawyers disagree.
Well, yeah. Well, speaking of Trump and his ego, he actually sat down with the president, the CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, and apparently was talking about his Twitter followers. And I think he was complaining that Obama has more followers than him.
Imagine that conversation.
But no, imagine if you get a meeting with the CEO of Twitter. Are you going to talk about your followers? I mean, let's remember, Russia used Twitter to attack our democracy, to influence the election. Like, there's a big problem going on. And our president decides to talk about his followers with the CEO.
Big ego, small something else.
I mean, Tiffany?
I think it just goes to show you the person that we elected into office and how much I feel like how much people are so, I don't want to say desperate for change, but how they're so committed to like racism and bigotry that they have this person in office and he's here complaining about his Twitter followers. I think it's pathetic. I think the fact that he is so attached to his Twitter account, where it's like, why did you have like an intern running your Twitter account? You can tell that he's sometimes like tweeting himself. I just
all the time, I think.
Yeah, that is true. I think more often than not, it is, Trump.
He needs like an intern to babysit him at this point.
Exactly.
So he's like a baby. These are how kids are. Like, yo, you got more followers. How'd you get all those followers, bro? Like, why does Obama have more followers than me? Like, what?
He's an entitled dude, bro. That's just like 77 years old.
I think he's 72.
Oh, sorry. No, he's the youngest president ever. He's the youngest president ever.
He's a vibrant young man.
Right now.
He's a vibrant young man.
He's the youngest and healthiest president ever.
He's McDonald's
every
every day.
Thing, though, he was like, look at Joe. I don't know about him.
He's so old.
But I mean,
not to be ageist.
Like,
sorry, not
to like change gears a little bit, but I think the bigger thing is like the lasting impact that the things that he's trying to do are having on our country. And one of those things is the Supreme Court and the fact that he was able to get his justices appointed, which we know is sort of a spinoff off the Let's Block Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, who, for what it's worth, was not like the best person ever, but was at least somebody that was being nominated by a Democratic president when he had the right to nominate him. And now there's these two big news stories out this week, both about the Supreme Court. One of them about the citizenship question. The Trump organization is asking, or they want to add a question about citizenship to the census. There has not been a question about citizenship on the census in, I believe, over 60 or 70 years. Most people agree that it's not necessary. The Constitution's clear. You're supposed to count all people in the United States, not just the citizens. And there's many people saying that by adding this question, it will negatively impact the census and therefore impact many things going forward in terms of redistricting, getting a true population count, potentially scaring off people from answering the census. And yet that's going forward. And there's a good chance that the Republican majority on the Supreme Court is going to uphold that and say that it's constitutional. At the same time, there's this other story out of the Supreme Court about LGBT rights. But, I don't want to jump too far ahead. So I guess I'll just preview that and we can talk about the citizenship thing and maybe loop back to the other thing.
Tiffany?
In regards to the citizenship question?
Yes.
Oh, I definitely think it's going to be a scary time in terms of like how they're going to make their decision on a citizenship question. But I already think like the damage is kind of like in the air, because I think when the census goes out, like a lot of people are going to be really scared to like fill it out.
That's true.
I think it's the same thing when we were talking about like how like undocumented folks should have the right to have a driver's license. And it's like, you already know, like there's no I would say firm understanding like what's going to be done with that data once they have it. If I'm an undocumented person, or if my citizenship status is questionable, I'm not going to want to have any part of giving the federal government my information, my address, and things of that nature. So I do think they're already putting out in the air that like, if you fill this out, like what could that mean for someone who is undocumented? And like you said, I don't think it matters, and it's going to totally shift how we do politics in this country.
Absolutely. Josh, quickly?
Listen, no one should answer the question, whether you're a citizen or not. Nobody should answer.
That's a fair response to this.
If they can't track every single person down, and I don't know, how do they even find out if you're a citizen or not? I mean, they can't.
I mean, usually through Social Security numbers, but what we find is, without going on a complete tangent, a lot of people who are here undocumented, they have Social Security numbers. They get a Social Security number one way or the other, and they do that so that they can work in a real job, which is why so many undocumented immigrants actually pay taxes, because they have a Social Security number, even if it's not actually their Social Security number that was assigned to them by birth or by, naturalization or by, being a green card holder. So there's a variety of different ways in which they could do that. But I actually think your proposal is pretty interesting, which is that nobody answer the question, even if it hits the census. And I wonder what would happen if all of us decided to opt out of that question as citizens. And I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to look into it more. I'm curious if that would invalidate all of our census responses, or if that would be considered a mandatory question or not. I mean, right now, when you do the census, there's certain parts of the census that, like, you don't actually have to fill out if you don't want to. You really just, some people don't respond to the census at all, which is a bad thing. And, we could go into a whole show about the census maybe going forward. But that's an interesting point. I'd love to look into that further and then loop back around.
Yeah, that is actually really interesting. Before we go on break, I want to give a quick shout out to Don L, who's watching via Facebook Live, Gregory Neesmith, and Delani Holland. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Really quickly, Jay-Z performed at Webster Hall Friday night. I don't know if anyone in the room had a chance to see it.
You know how I feel about Jay-Z.
What? Hold on. Well, I
know
just
he's a Jay-Z hater.
You are a Jay-Z hater.
Whoa.
So hold on.
I love Jay-Z. I just want him to retire and live his best life as a businessman. He just need to hang up his jersey in the rafters. He can't rap no more.
First of all,
I
he
disagree
can't
with
rap.
that.
First of all, he can't rap.
Whoa.
He actually had he had a
gunshot
freestyle about Nipsey Hussle, gentrification, and how we need to reclaim our neighborhoods. He went off from the top.
That freestyle wasn't it, though.
Thank you. At least you be honest. At least you be honest. Thank you.
Tiffany, I watched it twice. What do you mean it wasn't it?
He needs to own up to what he's done in Brooklyn when it comes to the Barclays and displacing black people.
Eminent domain. And he talked about eminent domain.
He needs to be honest about that. He needs to make amends because he did what he had to do. He bounced, and where he's living in Calabasas or whatever.
Well, he's still investing back into the community mentally and financially.
Can I spend that mental investment?
Shout out to Marcy. That's his mental investment.
Oh, wow. I mean... I think the most interesting thing about the concert is that, one, it was opening night at Webster Hall, which is a club that closed because they didn't have enough money to keep running and now has reopened. And also I heard that he brought out Nas, who he historically had a beef with, which I think was cool to, it would be cool if
And
they want to get
Cameron.
together
They've been
and
cool for a
Cameron
long time,
and
though.
figure out how to, stop the gentrification. But real quick before we go to break, I did want to mention that thing I was looping back around, the Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court did decide to hear a case this week about LGBT rights. It's very concerning. It's about whether or not LGBT people, can bring lawsuits as being discriminated on based on sex under Title VII. And so it's a huge civil rights issue. Unfortunately, we have to go to break, so we don't have a lot of time to get into it. But as a gay person, I find it extremely concerning, and it's going to be one of those things where we have to watch this space, and we'll talk more about that at a future time, at a future show.
Yes, we will. And for now, here is that epic freestyle by Jay-Z at Webster Hall Friday night here in New York City.
Your own hood, but these people do it. Claim eminent domain and have your people moving. That's a small glimpse into what Nipsey was doing. But anybody still confused as to what he was doing.
And we are back. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Again, my name is Selena Hill. I'm here with my co-host, Ilyssa Fuchs, and two of our trusty correspondents, Joshua Clennon, the AKA Jay-Z hater. It's all good. We're going to let you rock, Josh. And Tiffany Brown.
And of course,
Yes,
Stanley,
hi.
Stanley just woke up and said, "Hi, guys."
Right, from
Hi, Stanley.
live from
Hey,
Broccoli
Stanley.
Fest in DC. I'm sorry. So yeah, that's why I'm DJing. Like I'm engineering actually because Stanley's not here, and I keep forgetting to put your mics on. I'm sorry about that.
but give us money.
Yes, Patreon.com. If you guys want to support Let Your Voice Be Heard, please do so at patreon.com/BeHeardRadio. So we're kicking off the main segment talking about the 2020 Democratic primary. Now, this is being celebrated for its historic racial and gender diversity. And many of the candidates are talking about systemic racism and white privilege in a very frank and honest manner in order to connect with voters of color. For example, Beto from Texas, he acknowledged that he, and I quote, clearly has advantages, end quote, as a white man. Tim Ryan of Ohio said he talked about he said he didn't know any black people when Rep Tim Ryan.
Okay.
He's running?
I think he's floating the idea of doing so.
Oh,
He
gotta
said
chill.
that he didn't know any black people growing up. At least he admitted that.
You ain't voting for him.
Well, we'll talk about that more. Mayor Pete Buttigieg recently said, and I quote, any white candidate needs to show a level of consciousness around issues of white privilege. Josh, what did you just say?
I said, is that how you pronounce his name? I don't know how to pronounce it still.
Buttigieg.
I just say Mayor Pete.
Yeah. Let's just go with Mater Pete.
Okay, Mayor Pete. Also, so Elizabeth Warren, she has gone as far as to introduce a maternity bill that focuses on black mothers and the grim reality that women of color have significantly higher maternal mortality rates compared to their white counterparts. And she said, and I quote, doctors and nurses don't hear African American women's medical issues the same way that they hear the same things from white women. She also said hospitals they can bring down the number of deaths when it comes to black women dying if they don't receive a bonus. So she says she wants to hit hospitals where it hurts when it comes to their money in order to save black women's lives. She even went as far as to talk about a student loan forgiveness proposal that people of color are praising. Now, this proposal would tax the fortunes of people with over $50 million in wealth to provide student debt cancellation to 42 million low-income and middle-class Americans. Of course, we know that disproportionately student loan debt affects Latinx and African-American students. So, again, this proposal affects us. This is for us. Right. Now, on top of that, we have Kamala Harris. She's been talking about the crackdown on drugs. She made a comment to the likes of, oh, people are just now talking about the opioid crisis, but what happened when all our people were dying from crack?
Facts.
So, she's, as she's playing that,
She was putting them in jail.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
In California as a prosecutor. But you know what? She's saying, I guess she has evolved, and I guess she's just being realer. But moving on, Bernie Sanders earlier this week, he was asked a really stark question about supporting people in prison with the right to vote. And he said, yes, even the Boston bomber, even convicted rapists, anyone who is in jail deserves the right to vote while they are still in jail. Now, people like me and AOC, we applauded this because we know that a disproportionate amount of people locked up are black and brown. So, yes, give our black brothers and sisters the right to vote. But he's being criticized heavily for saying things like that. So, and lastly, Joe Biden, he is in the race. He launched his campaign ad with a focus on Charlottesville and Trump's notorious response when he called white supremacists very fine people. And Biden also hired my girl, Simone D. Sanders, as his senior advisor. Tiffany's shaking her head. I know we all have thoughts, and we're going to get there. So basically, I say all of that to say that candidates, especially the white ones, they're doing whatever it takes to show that they are woke. And I want to know, are they passing the woke litmus test? Are they reaching us? And that's what this episode of Let Your Voice Be Heard is all about. So, Tiffany, you over there, you couldn't contain yourself. Who are they? Are they woke? What's your response to these candidates, their proposals, and their rhetoric when it comes to people of color?
All I want to say is, Simone Sanders, I hope you get in the bag, girl. Get the bag.
Get in the bag.
Get the bag. That's the ultimate goal. Just get the bag. I think Joe Biden, I don't want to go back to yesteryear or prior to Trump. I do think you are seeing more emerging voices that we want to be more left and more progressive. And I think just saying that I can represent what Obama was trying to do, I don't think that's good enough for the Dems that are kind of subscribed to the school of like AOC. Elizabeth Warren, even though, side-eyed her about her whole like DNA ancestry when it comes to being a Native American, that girl, you didn't have to do that.
Pocahontas.
You didn't have to do that, and that is going to be a part of her campaign. That's just what it is, but she walked into that. But I do think out of all of them, she's not pandering to us because she's talking about a very real issue and a very real concern that a lot of black women, who is the backbone of the Democratic Party, who typically goes out and vote and trying to save democracy. We're putting America on our back. Shout out to Maxine Waters and others. I do think she's talking to a very real issue, and I don't think it's pandering. I don't think it's just like, simply talking about like criminal justice reform. She has like a real plan, and as like a policy person, I appreciate that. And like saying like, no, we're gonna hit hospitals and not give them bonuses. When it comes to student loan debt, like a lot of millennials, you went to college, we are going even further than our parents, and we are saddled with debt, and that is the reason why some of us are still living at home. Some of us are not able to like really start our careers because we're paying back like $700 in student loans. I know people who have over $200,000 in student loan debt, and they're making $40,000. Like that, something's not right there. So I think she has real policies. Kamala Harris, she's a black sister, so I'm always going to ride for my sisters, but I do think she's going to have to justify things of the past that she has done. And I also need to think we need to be honest. A lot of black people during the crack epidemic were very much, we got to do something because our people are out here wilding, and for that something was jail and wasn't necessarily health. So I think we need to be honest about the time and the context when like Dems and black people who say there are Dems were very much, tough on crime.
That's a very good synopsis, Tiffany. Thank you so much for that. I want to throw it to Ilyssa to get your reaction on, these policies, proposals, and the rhetoric that they're saying to reach voters of color.
Right. I mean, look, I think some of the policy proposals that we're hearing are good, and I think they're great policy proposals in the way that they impact and will affect people of color, and just generally speaking, impact people. Like student loan debt, for example, is one of those issues that very well may have a very big effect on people of color, but would also help people like me who have a very, big amount of student loan debt, and in particular, millennials. And so there's an age thing going on there too. But, I was saying to Josh before we got on the air, and, obviously as a white person, like, I can't speak to what black people want from these candidates because I'm not black. But my personal opinion, just in terms of what I'm hearing, is that I don't think any of these candidates, except for really Elizabeth Warren, has proposed anything that radical in terms of helping black people. And I think the two black candidates both have their own problems. I mean, Cory Booker has taken a huge amount of money from the pharmaceutical companies. So if we want to talk about the opioid crisis and how it's killing people and, killing people of color and has been for a long time, which is sort of a digression. People weren't paying attention to the opioid crisis in the 70s when heroin was killing people of color. But that's another show, as we say. And yet here's Cory Booker taking money from the pharmaceutical companies. That's problematic. You look at Kamala Harris and, I see where you're coming from. Like, you as a black woman want to support a black woman. And I get that people can be redeemed, but she's also somebody who made a career off of putting people in jail as a prosecutor. And then you look at the white candidates, and they're, of course, all problematic just by virtue of the fact that they're white. But then we got levels here. So, like when we break down those levels, I would say, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are at the top in terms of best possibly situated to deal with race issues, whereas Mayor
The
Pete
two whitest
and Joe
white
Biden
oaks
maybe
in
not
the
so. I
race.
mean, Joe Biden was literally somebody who drafted the crime bill, which is a bill that increased mass incarceration and put black people, people of color in jail, and also Anita Hill, which was another big story this week. So I think there's a lot there.
I would say for me, it boils down to either Bernie Sanders or Kamala Harris. Bernie Sanders, because he's the only candidate, he's literally in a league of his own. He's the only, declared socialist in this race. He's trying to do more than just, BS rhetoric, welfare programs. He's trying to actually reform the capitalist society that we live in that naturally generates and causes people to oppress others. So he's in a field of his own. Everyone else is a capitalist. And, I mean, people like Elizabeth Warren, yeah, she's saying everything that we want to hear right now, but she can't win. She can't beat Trump. 2020 is going to be won in the trenches, and she's not ready to go there. Like, he's going to drag her all over the place.
I mean, why? Just because he called her Pocahontas?
I mean, yeah. I mean, that alone is going to win him 2020. Like, Pocahontas.
People keep saying that she can't win. Well, if we keep saying she can't win, then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fact is, if people got behind her and said, like, yeah, actually, she could win, and here's why, then I think she would get more support.
She can't. I mean,
why do you think she could win?
First of all, I wouldn't trust a white woman candidate in the first place because white women don't come out to vote for white women.
You trust a white man, though?
No, I don't at all, really.
You trust Bernie.
I trust Bernie, but he's in a field of his own. He's just ideologically.
Being a socialist, does it cancel his whiteness
or his maleness?
Listen, he's a
proclaimed
Jewish. He's a proclaimed Jewish, so technically he's a minority. I mean,
that's fair. That's fair.
Listen, I support Bernie because I know what he's trying to do is going to be the most benefit to black people, regardless of whether he knows how to articulate it. That's his problem because Bernie, he's not one of these politicians that just can come on stage and just give you the rhetoric. He's real, and he understands that, listen, the policies, the structure that exists now is going to continuously lead to oppression. And it's like we have black people who are now successful, and they want to continue this capitalist system because they want to oppress other black people.
Well, we know you support Bernie. That actually was leading to my next question. Tiffany, which candidate most resonates with you at this point in the election?
The candidate that most resonates with me, honestly, is Warren, and it's because her talking directly about black women and their health issues. And I say this because black women, we came out and we voted in overwhelming numbers. We, like I said, black women, we always, are voting Democratic, and we are the backbone of the party. My issues with Bernie, especially he was at this conference with She the Vote or something like that. And
She the People Forum.
Yes, She the People Forum. And he was asked a very direct and pointed question, and he, pivoted to his talking points. And
he did.
And, he was like, and you heard a lot of moans and groans, but I was like, those are valid because those people vote. Those people vote. Those people are in the communities. Those people are, have nonprofits. Like a lot of black women, and this is not a slight at black men, but a lot of black women, we are in politics. And even though a lot of people don't see us in politics, we are there. That's why Joe Biden has Simone Sanders in his camp. That's why Nina Turner is with Bernie Sanders, because they know the value of black women. And for him to be at that forum, not be able to answer that question, and then Nina Turner to turn around and shame black people for calling him out and holding him accountable, I think that's an issue. He needs to come up. If he is so much better for black people, he needs to know how to talk directly to black people.
Great point, Tiffany. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
learn how to articulate it.
Hold on, Josh. I'm not sure Bernie is passing the woke litmus test either because of what happened at She the People Forum. But I hear your points, Josh. We do have to go on a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue talking about this 2020 race and who's really talking to us and resonating with us because our vote matters. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard.
I know that mean they traffic is slow. Somebody just gotta purchase a lot. So being tamed, I'd rather be well. This brandy, they wanna be down.
And we are back. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard. We're talking about the 2020 Democratic Party. There are 20 Democrats running. And so far, Josh said he's sticking with Bernie.
Bernie or Kamala.
Or Kamala. Tiffany says she's voting for Elizabeth Warren. I know Ilyssa said offline she's either going with Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, still undecided. Just FYI, I still have not made my decision yet, but I will say Joe Biden, honestly, I may vote for Joe Biden. Reason being, hear me out. Honestly, at this point, I am so exhausted with the Trump administration and politics. I am voting for who I think can win whoever can win the White House in 2020. Now, right now, Biden's poll numbers show that he leads the field amongst Black and Native American women, according to a poll that was reported by Vox. That is what it's saying. Biden is also the front runner. I mean, honestly, look.
Bernie's the front runner.
Go ahead.
Well, let's get into that in a second because we're getting a lot of really good comments from Facebook Live that we want to get out there. So Greg Neesmith, what up, Greg? Says, what about Andrew Yang and his proposal for universal basic income?
Yeah.
Do we have no love for Yang? So that's
I
an
love
interesting
that.
point.
I love UBI.
Yeah.
Stanley, thank you, Stanley, says that he supports Elizabeth Warren. He says, like I said, no one else has offered real policy. And that I think he says he was someone I was looking at as well. I think he may be talking about Andrew Yang. But he says, I have a few friends who work on his campaign, but his immigration policies are wildly problematic. Don L says there's no easy choice, which I think is very fair. And Stanley jumps back in to say Biden has literally done nothing to earn the black vote.
Well, those are
True.
great points. So, Ilyssa, what would you say when it comes to just who earns our vote, would you say at this point?
I mean, I think that overlaps with the last kind of thing. I think that right now the person who's earning the black vote is the person who is going to propose policies that are going to have the best impact on voters of color. And I know we're just talking about the black vote, but obviously I do mean voters of color more largely, including the Hispanic vote and including Native American vote and other minorities, generally speaking. But just for 1 second to go back to this conversation that we were having before about Biden versus Bernie. Like Hillary Clinton won the South because Bernie could not carry the South. But Bernie now understands that there's a big reason that's why he lost the South, and he thinks that he's putting himself in a better position to be able to win those voters by doing a better job of talking to black people. Whether or not he is or isn't doing a better job is up for debate, as sort of we touched upon when we talked about the She the People farm. On the other hand, Biden, which you brought up, and I think is an interesting point, like he literally, and Stanley also mentioned, has literally done nothing to earn the back vote, but yet people like him because he was connected with Barack Obama, and that may mean that he has the ability to win black voters even despite not having the better policies. So I think this time it's a real toss-up, and it's going to go with, do people want the person who has the best policies for black people, or do people want the person who they think has the best chance to beat Trump, and is that person the same person? I don't know if it is.
Hold on, Josh, because I know you want to chime in. Honestly, that's a great question. At this point, I'm voting for who I think has the best chances. And I also think another thing that is conflicting our country is, do we want someone who has wonky policy proposals like Elizabeth Warren, who keeps saying, I have a plan, and she's like giving us all of this policy? Or are we looking for someone who's charismatic, who, knows how to speak to us? And honestly, I don't think Americans are smart enough to really understand the minutia, to quote Mayor Pete, of policies. And I think they're going to go to someone who speaks to them or even entertains them. And honestly, I think that's Joe Biden. Josh?
I think people need to be considering who's going to give us the most access when they're in office, because they all, they all say these lofty proposals now, but then it's another thing when you're trying to get legislation passed through Congress. We need to know that's who should earn our vote, the person who's going to give us the most access while they're in office, who's going to be helping our black entrepreneurs, business people get the deals and resources that they need so that we can grow our own economic base as a people. That's what's going to help black people.
Agree to that, and I do want to switch gears because, shout out to Stanley who's watching us via Facebook Live. On Thursday, he actually, he brought up a really good point on our pre-show call. He expressed frustration over the heavy media attention being paid to white male candidates in these early days of the Democratic primary. And now other people are saying that the polls are even misleading, and it's creating a narrative that only a white man can defeat Trump, which is, kind of counters what I've been saying myself. Tiffany, are white Democratic candidates getting too much attention without necessarily having the credentials?
Yes, and that that goes without
She's like,
saying.
what else is new?
And the sky is blue.
Right.
Because we know that they're getting most of the attention, but I think it was Clinton and Obama who had won overwhelmingly the popular vote compared to any other president or potential president. So they're definitely getting more attention. When it comes to Mayor Pete, everyone's they're harping on the fact that he's a gay white man, and
There's no policy proposal.
but no policy
He
proposal.
speaks 5 languages, and he can do sign language.
And he went to Harvard, and on top of that, they were talking about how he raised all of this money once he announced, but Kamala Harris raised more than him, and no one addressed that. So it's just of course he's getting more coverage. I don't think a white man can only beat Trump, but I also understand how the society works and when it comes to racism. People feel obviously comfortable with seeing a white man in office. And, they're going to have to deal with those internal, battles with themselves. But I don't think it's only a white man's going to be able to beat Trump. I think it's going to be a person who's willing to get down in the gutter. I know Mama Michelle Obama told us to go high, but you just can't go high with someone like Trump.
So you really think a woman or a black woman could win the 2020 race and beat Trump?
I don't think, a black woman should be put in the position of president because they're just not going to respect her in no sort of way. I do think that Warren, she's going to have to get down and dirty. And not dirty the way Trump is doing it, but I think offering policies as much as I may love it or Stanley, whoever may love it, that's not going to get the people going. It's just not.
Look, I agree. I will say, and we don't have time to really delve into it, I think sexism also plays a large part of what's going on right now. And that goes back to the comments I made earlier. I think that Elizabeth Warren has really good policy proposals. I think she may not call herself a socialist, but her policy proposals are equally as far to the left as Bernie's are when it comes to dealing with income inequality. She's done more legislatively than Bernie has done. And I like Bernie. So I say that from a part of love for Bernie. I mean, literally, if you look at Bernie's record, he's passed 2 bills naming a post office, and there's one other.
Passed most amendments, though.
And a bunch of other things, whereas Liz had a really big part to play in developing the Consumer Protection or Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is literally a group that helps to protect consumers. And there are plenty of people and poor people, many of whom are people of color and black people specifically. So, I think that when people are looking at Bernie versus Liz and people are giving Bernie so much more credit, that's also sexism speaking in some respects.
Josh, quickly.
Bernie is the only white male that can win, that can beat Trump, and Kamala is the only other candidate who can beat Trump. That's what it boils down to. Nobody else stands a chance.
Why do you think Kamala can beat Trump? I'm just curious.
Because black people would be excited about coming out to vote for her, and they would not be excited about coming out to vote for anybody else.
You don't think they would be
I think it would be halfway excited about Bernie because people just don't get it yet.
I think a lot of black people are turned off by her record as a prosecutor, and I think you're seeing that from people on the left, like Justice Democrats.
You see that on the internet, on the memes, on the liberal, bubble that we all live in.
Amongst
but that's
educated
not,
black people.
That ain't the church folk,
and, I mean it disparagingly.
And the church folk are the ones who vote.
Right.
So black church folk, you said, would definitely come out and vote for Kamala.
Oh, hell yeah.
She gonna be an Abyssinian.
Hell yeah, Abyssinia would be lit.
Okay, so thanks for breaking it down there, guys. We are gonna wrap it up. I want to get your final remarks about what candidate would actually be best for black voters. I know we touched on that, and who is actually passing the woke litmus test, because I feel like they're all definitely trying, but maybe not all succeeding. Ilyssa?
I don't know if anybody's passing right now. I think they're trying, and I think that they should continue to try, and they should continue to propose things that will help, black voters. I think that those proposals may very well help other people that are not black, because a rising tide lifts all boats. But I don't know if anybody's actually passing yet. And we also have to be careful because we want them to make these proposals, but we don't want it to just be pandering. Like, there has to be something there to back it up. It's not good enough to just pass the litmus test if all you're doing is pandering.
Thank you. Final thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, I think the same thing. They're all pandering. But I think people got to really look at, who has the overall vision for the country. And I mean, like, I love Liz and her ideas, but she's not trying to reform the capitalist structure that we live in. So for me, that's where she loses me.
Tiffany?
I don't know if everyone's pandering, but I would definitely say that I think people need to vote based off of the direct impact of their lives. And I feel like Liz is talking about that. If you're a black woman and you want to have a child, or if you're receiving any sort of health care, I think that's a very real issue for us. And I think, if she just kind of, I don't want to say toughen up, but if the media wasn't so sexist and she was willing to get down and dirty with Trump, there's a shot there.
So you definitely think it's a possibility. I'll say this, just to end things off. It's a false belief to believe that the primacy of the white moderate voter is the most valuable voter in our country. Time and time again, African American voters and African American women specifically have showed that we have been at the heart of the Democratic Party. And I will say it's very encouraging to see that so many candidates are at least trying. Some, yes, they are pandering, but at least for us to finally be acknowledged, that is something that I feel like speaks to the progress that we're making, especially the fact that so many spoke at the She the People Forum. That's like the first and only forum for and by black women. And I think 8 or 9 of the candidates actually came. And, some of those candidates were booed, like Bernie Sanders. Others received standing ovations, like Kamala Harris. So it just shows that they're paying attention to us. And that's why it's so important for us to continue paying attention to them. Read their policy proposals. Go beyond just the rhetoric and the hype and the viral videos. Make sure that we are supporting the candidate who is going to be supportive of us once they actually make it into that White House. And that's going to take diligence, that's going to take research, and it's going to take our part in being informed, educated, and empowered. 2020 is coming, guys, and we need to be ready. On that note, I just want to thank everyone for chiming in via Instagram Live. We see you. Thank you so much. Facebook Live, thank you for leaving those comments. And also, if you guys want to continue to support Let Your Voice Be Heard, please do so on our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/BeHeardRadio.
Watch out now. Basura.